Welcome to the kbbreview podcast. I'm Andy Davis. Thank you for joining us all for the third part of our look at how the industry has changed in the last 5 years since COVID. We're doing it by looking at the relationships between retailers and the three vital groups of people without whom they wouldn't have a business. In the first two parts, we talked about the consumer and the supplier, and now to round it all off, we're looking at installers. How has that interaction changed? How much harder is it to find good ones? Can you afford good ones? And what role should and do retailers have in solving the skills crisis in installation? The full gang of Justine, Nick, Trevor and Liz are all here, but first, let's be honest, we've all practiced our Oscar-winning speech in front of the mirror. I want to thank Mr. Spielberg for taking a chance on me. That kind of thing. No? Just me. Either way, we all love to win awards, and with entries now open for the biggest awards in the kitchen and bathroom retail industry, now's the time that you can give it a go. Hollywood calls the Oscars the kbbreview Retail and Design Awards of the movie industry for a good reason. And with categories for retailers, designers, suppliers and installers, there's something in there for everyone. Plus, it's totally free to enter, as always. Go to kbbreview.com/awards for all the details. That link is in the episode description, and the closing date is Thursday, November the 13th. Good luck. So here are our Fab Four. On drums, we have Justine Bullock from the Tap End near Cardiff. Hello, Justine.
Hi, hello.
On bass, it's Liz PJ, Liz Pantley-Jones from Lima Kitchens in Milton Keynes. Hello, Liz.
Hi, all.
And on lead guitar, we have Nick Warrington from Stuart J. Warrington in Macclesfield. Hello, Nick.
Hello, good morning.
And driving the tour bus, we have Trevor Scott from RFK and Rugby.
I thought he was going to say lead singer, in which case I was going to bail out straight away because I'm tone deaf.
Head of security at most. How's our week all been? Busy week? Slow week? How's it all going? Nick, can you tell us where you are right now?
I am sat on our trade counter today, so proper hands-on. Everyone is off on holiday almost on the trade counter side, even the usual holiday standing cover. So, yeah, all hands to pump and selling tube and fittings for the morning.
There you go. The reality is, so if we hear a ding-dong...
Well, this is the first one. So.
And here they are. So you mute yourself, we'll carry on. Right, Liz, how's your week been?
Insane. It's been so busy. So, yeah, I mean, I dared to take 3 days off. So we all know what it's like when you come back.
But that's good news. It's better to be busy than quiet. What about you, Justine? How's your week been?
Yeah, it's been very busy. We had quite a quiet August, so we were waiting for September, and yeah, it's been very busy, which is great. We're really happy about that.
Trevor, how about you in your empire?
Well, I was at a dealer meeting on Friday in London, and it was a little bit slash your wrists, gloom and despondency. Everybody's got a reasonable quantity of inquiries and leads, but can't get them over the line. And this wasn't sort of a one-off situation. There were 7 or 8 of us that were in the room, and they were all taking exactly the same line.
Yeah, I was at the bathroom manufacturers conference in Birmingham, and the atmosphere there was very similar. Look at it this way. We had a presentation from the chief economist of the Institute of Directors, and by the end of it, everyone was so depressed that a guy came on to do a presentation from Macmillan Cancer, and everyone cheered up. So, yeah, but look, I think there's the green shoots and all that kind of thing, I think is coming through in lots of showrooms that I talk to. So I'm hopefully, fingers crossed. I mean, look, Nick's just done some business. He's just sold...
sold a roll of PTFE.
There you go.
Congratulations.
That's doubled his sales for today, isn't it? Already, brilliant.
It doesn't work like Elastoplast. That's the only difference.
That's the trouble. That's the trouble.
So, speaking of PTFE, we're going to do installers today because we've done customers, we've done suppliers. We're going to talk now about how installers have changed in the 5 years since COVID. And I think we all know this is a massive topic, installation, particularly where the hell they all are and what they're all doing. So, let's start actually with the simple supply and demand question. For you guys, in your experience, has it become harder to find and keep good installers? And why do you think that is? Let's start with you, Liz.
Why? So I just don't think there are enough good installers out there. I think there are people who believe that they are, but when you start working with them, you can find some of the challenges working in a way and delivering a finished product in the way you want your product to look. People have been doing it a long time. They have their own techniques and ways they want it to look, but when they come to work for a showroom, we all have slight finishes that we want completed in a certain way. So I think that can be a challenge, but yeah, they're just not out there. As we've been saying for many years, many people are coming up to retirement, slowing down, and there just aren't the people coming through in order to pick up that work.
Is it just supply and demand, Nick? Is it as simple as that? You've got lots of work and there aren't enough to go around.
one of the reasons that availability is an issue is that the demand is there, so fitters can pick and choose a little bit to some extent to the work that they do. And because of that, it's difficult to get people on board. And if you want them to be working for you consistently, you've got to make sure that you've got a good, steady supply of work for them. And once they see that, I think the relationship can change a little bit. But finding people is really, I'm lucky at the moment. I've got a good fitter who I rely on, and I've got a couple of others that I use as and when I need additional support. But I have had periods where we've struggled to find people that fit in a way that we want them to, and that can be a real difficulty.
So what about you, Justine? Because as the others have said there, it's not just about finding good fitters, it's about finding good fitters that do it the way you want them to do it.
So last time we checked, 23% of our clients have their own fitters. That was higher than I expected it to be, but the remainder, they ask us to provide fitters, so a recommended fitter. That's quite a lot of recommended fitters that we need. We actually have 10 recommended fitters that we use regularly. And some of them are already, they booked up until March, April, one of them May next year. So we're desperate for more fitters because some of the projects we take on, they can be like bigger, might be knocking booths into one, etc., etc. So we do need a certain type of fitter that is happy to take on some sort of like construction element as well as tiling, batten fitting. And it's really hard. We actually had our own installation company for 3 years in a bid to try and like solve our problem. But it just pulled me away from the shop so much that we knocked that on the head after about 3 years. And we went back to just recommended fitters then.
Trevor, you've got quite a big organisation in comparison, and you've got lots of stuff going on. How does it work for you, and what's been the difference you've seen?
Yeah, well, we don't sell fitting as part of the contracted sale of the project. It's a separate contract between the client and the installer. But we recommend the installers, and the installers we recommend are guys that we know and trust. We don't phone up Rent-A-Fitter if we get particularly busy. These are known, trusted people that we've worked with for many years. On the retail side of things, we've got 4 really good fitters that have been with us for literally decades, one of whom, Rusty's, been with me virtually since they opened the business. And that's the problem. They're ageing, and it's who's going to come in behind them to replace them when they do finally decide to stop working and stop installing. So because we've got the contracts division, we tend to test out new installers on contracts initially. Now, they might not be contract installers. They probably prefer to be doing retail work. But we explain to them that, well, we don't know you, you don't know us. So let's try you out on a contract where we, without the presence of an end user on the job, but a site manager and us, let's check each other out. Let's have a look at your working standards, your methodology and such like, and make sure that you're doing the job to the standard that we want and that you're happy to work with us. And then if all things being fair and equal, we'll start feeding some retail work through to you. And that seems to work for us quite well, to be fair. And we've got 3 or 4 further teams that are much younger, the sort of guys in their mid-30s that we're doing a lot of work with, particularly on contracts and filtering them through into retail. The difficulty, of course, is that you bring these guys on and you think, great, that's fantastic. And the way things are at the moment, you can't give them enough work. Because there's a lack of continuity of supply, they're going off and finding jobs elsewhere. And when you do call them and say, look, I've got a fit for you in 3 months' time, are you okay? They go, nope, we're busy, we're booked. It becomes a vicious circle.
So given the supply and demand issue here, do they want to work with small independents or not? What kind of conversations do you have with them, Liz? Because they can get work from lots of different places. Are they more likely to want to link themselves with 1 or 2 businesses like yours, or are they just going, no, I'm going to work where the money is?
For us, we've had a reliable installation team for quite some time. Our 2 head fitters are slowing down. One of them spends 3 to 4 months easily in Thailand now, so he's not around so much. His wife's Thai, so that's kind of impeded what we can do. Our other fitter has also slowed down, and up until last year did a huge amount of work for us, and we could really rely on him being available if we had the work. But with this downturn of last year, that really kind of decreased. So we've had to start looking at growing that installation team again. We've tried a few different things. We've taken on a couple of younger installers and apprentices, but that's not quite worked out. So now we're kind of in a situation where we're trialing out new people. We normally try them out in the showroom or in our own homes so we can see what their work is like beforehand. Of recent, we've just taken on someone who's multi-skills who can plug some of those holes and some of the issues and remedials and make us a bit more responsive moving forward. So that's the approach that we've taken.
Justine, you don't employ fitters, as you say, so you've got your list of phone numbers, if you like. How difficult are you finding pinning them down to want to work with you when they've got so many offers, presumably from other places? Is that hard to make them want to work with you?
I don't think it's hard to make them want to work with us because in our area, there aren't many like mid to higher end independents. There's only a couple. So I think they actually actively want to work with us. The good ones, they get very booked up very quickly. So, for example, if we had someone now that would be great for one of those fitters, we're telling customers that they have to wait until May. So that's, there's a problem because we have too many clients and not enough fitters. But I don't think it's necessarily an issue with, do they want to work with us? I think they do. We could do with more. That's the only problem we have, Brady.
Nick, you've got like one guy there, one or two guys that you work with. Have you been tempted to employ them?
I have. I was on a previous podcast where we talked about this, and I'm no further on with it. And I think the issue for me is that the fitters that I use like to keep themselves self-employed. And I've now got someone walking through the door.
Let's ask him.
I'll come back.
Liz, you're shaking your head there. Are you right? You completely ruled this out?
So we've tried employing fitters, and I think keeping them busy is difficult. Our preferred fitters were still the guys that are coming up to retirement. Just the wealth of experience and problem solving that these people bring, it makes it an easier job. So we've employed people. We've ended up paying more than we could afford with the work that we ended up, especially with the downturn of last year. But then also they're looking at what self-employed fitters are earning and thinking, why am I not earning this money? So that balance and keeping them involved and keeping them happy is really, really difficult. And I think having someone focused solely on fitting installations just hasn't worked for us, which is why we've gone down the multi-skilled route rather than just one discipline.
There's a balance here, Trevor, isn't there? Every independent retailer I know wants as much as possible under their control because they're all control freaks, right? And that's what makes them successful. And the installation bit always feels like the bit that's always slightly out of their control and is more in the control of the fitters. What do you think? Is there not an RFK installation team somewhere that you have always wanted?
Well, there's a certain irony to this, which is that, right from day one, back in 1993, I made the decision to not profit centre installation and to escape the VAT trap with it as well by only recommending installers to our clients, and it was then up to the client whether or not they took up that recommendation. And though we, it's a moot point. We have a management fee that is included in the price of selling the kitchen for project managing the installation and cover our costs for doing so. But ultimately, the installer is responsible for his own work because he's subcontracted directly to the client. And that historically has worked well for us because we've effectively saved 20% for the consumer on the overall selling price of the labour element of the job. Because the irony is that with our contracts division, which is burgeoning and growing reasonably strongly, is that in order to zero rate the entire job for the developer, we invoice installation. So that does carry the VAT, which then the developer immediately claims back, or the we zero rate more accurately. So the debate is ongoing as to whether or not we actually set up a completely separate installations company. And I think it's almost inevitable that we will go down that road. It's just that the timing's not right at the moment.
But there would be an issue with finding good guys to be part of that, surely. The recruitment of that must be difficult.
Well, they would still, there will be some that would be employees, but there would still be a subcontract element to that. I mean, even if, as Liz has said about employing multi-skilled tradesmen, even with the installer base that we've got currently, where they are multi-skilled, they still can't do their own electrics. They're not Part P registered electricians. They can't do their own gas works. They're not gas safe registered. So we've still got to bring in external trades for that part of the job. And at the moment, the lead fitter will subcontract himself to these other sub-specialist trades, and they will bill him, and he will pay them out of his overall pot for the cost of installing the kitchen, whether that be knocking out, plastering, plumbing, electrics and such like.
Well, I'm going to stop you there, Trevor, because I'm getting a headache of how complicated that sounds. Now, Nick, I'm presuming, has anyone ever come in and asked for 4 candles? Because that's all I'm thinking looking at you right now.
We get that request at least once a week, yeah.
Of course you do. Right, let's ask about money with you, Nick. Clearly, supply and demand means that rates are going to be a massive issue with installers. And we carried a recruitment ad a while ago, and it was for a small bathroom showroom, and it was, showroom manager, 30 grand, whatever it was, bathroom designer, 26 grand, whatever it was, and then it was bathroom fitter, 70 grand, right? The fitter was earning twice as much as the person running the showroom. Has it just gone mad? How do you actually cope with this? At what point is it just unsustainable?
I think the difficulty is rates have gone up and you have to be competitive in the market. One of the methods that I use to recruit and retain gang of tradespeople is to pay them a fair sum. And my view is that, I can't have a pie that big and only give them a tiny little slice of it. I like to think that everybody within the team all earns their fair share. So I do have that view that they should be paid fairly. Part of the problem is, and this is a personal opinion, I think that there's been a shift in the way that tradespeople earn their money. If you look back historically, they used to earn part of their money off the back of the goods that were being supplied, and then a daily rate was on top of that, and accumulate the two together, and that earned them their wage. That doesn't happen so much anymore. The middleman, me, is being cut out in terms of the trade counter. People are buying direct more often and just asking installers to fit. This is on the bathrooms, on the kitchen side. And I think that has changed the dynamic of how fitters approach the pricing of their work, and they're looking purely at a daily rate. And if they make a bit of extra on top on the jobs where they do supply, they take that as well. Personally, I don't think that a consumer is a lot better off today by buying their goods direct than when they used to source it through the installer, just because at the end of the day, that fitter still has to earn a living and pay for the van, the insurance, the tools. All those items have gone up. So I do understand that there's going to be additional costs there. For me, I've been here 11 and a half years now. I would estimate that the rate has doubled in that period between what I was paying someone when I first took over versus what I'm paying now.
I mean, Justine, if you're recommending fitters to people, that's fine, but they've only got a certain budget. They've only got a certain amount to spend. And if the proportion of that has to be spent on the fitter has gone up, I mean, doubled in the way that Nick describes it, how does that work for you in terms of your slice of that budget?
So when we engage a client, we ask them what's their overall budget. And then when we do a design, we have to factor what we expect the fitting to be. And usually we can look that word, so we know what our best fitters kind of charge for similar projects. But yeah, we're basically taking sometimes the budget and halving it for goods, and half it goes to the fitter, yeah.
We do a similar thing. We ask the budget, but we ask how they've arrived at that budget. And we do a lot of the project work. So we're regularly pricing for new doors, windows, walls, electrics. And we just help the client understand what each area costs and why what they're looking at may not be reasonable, regardless if they go with us or if they outsource. And yes, our fitters aren't necessarily the cheapest that are out there, but we know that they're reliable. They do their remedials. They do it to the standard that's required. It's certificated, and all of that has a value beyond the outset of a financial cost, because the amount of times where people work with someone who is cheaper that they have additional costs just happens quite a lot. We see that time and time again. So we have those conversations and just try to help people understand why the cost is what it is, and then help them work out the compromise of if they forego some of the things they'd like, or if they work towards being able to achieve what they want maybe 6 months, a year later down the line.
I mean, it's just really hard, isn't it? The cyclical nature of the business means that you're only ever going to dip in and out with people when you're busy or they're not. And it just gets very, very complicated to manage, I think. One of the things, Trevor, I think that lots of manufacturers talk about, and they're quite focused on at the moment, is the influence of the installer over the consumer. In other words, the bit either side of you. Has that changed a lot? Do you think installers and fitters have an influence over the consumer in the kitchen side of things? We'll come to bathrooms in a minute, which I think is probably more acute. But What do you think?
Well, it has been the case of in days gone by where the installer has said, "Oh, why did the designer do that? This is a much better solution because it's easier for him or her." And they've sadly undermined us as a business as a consequence. And we've had to have very pointed conversations with some installers about basically winding their necks in and keeping stum. When they are working, albeit subcontract and employed directly by the client, they are nevertheless representing RFK, and that they've got to take the view that anything that they feel about the install or about the product or about the design is a conversation they need to have with us first. And if we feel it's necessary to have that conversation with the consumer, we will do in the presence of the installer if necessary to arrive at a solution that works for all parties. But many years of doing this has meant that we've learned how to ensure that installers are managed and that they remember who at the end of the day is giving them the work each month.
Justine, famously, a sharp intake of breath from a fitter could completely undermine an entire job, can't it, when they see the tap they don't like or whatever? What influence do you think they have? Because one of the differences in bathrooms is, of course, lots of people employ plumbers, fitters, installers directly to do their bathroom for them rather than going via someone like you. So what influence do you think they have? And has that changed?
So by the time a client gets to meet our recommended fitters, they've already paid the deposit for their bathroom. So we don't send recommended fitters to the house to meet the customer before. So we have quite a different approach to things. But by that time, the customer's already paid the deposit. We've allocated a recommended fitter for them on their behalf. So we have a slightly different approach to things, which means the fitter can't interfere or put the customer off. But we know the areas that the fitter won't be happy with. So we try and match the job with the fitter that's got either the most enthusiasm for creative things or, it's about matching the customer with the project with the fitter to create the least resistance. We learned the hard way, trying just to make fitters do things and it just doesn't work. So now we do a bit of a matchy, a bit like matchmaking, really.
Liz, does the influence of the installer on the consumer make a difference? Because they all have their favourite things they like doing or like fitting, or the products they like and the products they don't.
Yeah, completely. I'd say historically it's been more of an issue, but now we've got it more under control. We have quite a rigorous process of documenting decisions made, so that's all recorded and transferred over to a client. Also, I'm very open with a client. If they're asking for a certain product or something to be done in the same way, I'll go, the fitters, and just kind of make a bit of a joke out of it, because they will want to make their life easier if possible, but they're also under very strict instructions that they come to us with questions first, because 9 times out of 10, we will have already asked the question and have the answer. Even if the client's there, don't go to them, because we're trying to make the process stress-free and simple. So come back to us first.
Nick, would you ever stop selling a product or a brand because fitters didn't like them?
I think that there are products that we've perhaps tried, I'm trying to think of ones. I'm sure there's products that we've tried previously where, for whatever reason, we ourselves have not liked it and we've found installation issues with it. I can think of it more on the bathroom side, actually, where there's certain products, even when we're selling, where we know that some people have difficulties on the installation of those things. And I tend to highlight those at the point of sale, purely because it comes back and haunts you anyway. So why go down that route? But, I've got a rack of brochures here. Everything in those brochures is theoretically available to our customers, but that's not to say that I'd willingly sell them all, because there's certain things within there that, for me, are just more headache.
Just not worth the grief, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's draw this to a conclusion by talking about what happens next, because you've all talked about shortages, you've all talked about retirement, installers getting on. Do you feel a responsibility? There's a lot of discussion in the industry about this, of course. Do you feel responsibility as retailers to play your part in trying to solve this problem? Or is this a problem for somebody else to sort out? Liz, you talked about apprenticeships, etc. Is this something that are you doing for yourself, for the future of the industry, or is this something that someone else needs to sort out?
I think pushing it over to someone else sorting it out just causes yourselves more issues long term. So trying to be proactive and get ahead of it as much as possible is only a good thing, I think. Yes, I've not had a huge amount of success with apprentices, and that could be me. I can I completely accept that. But it doesn't mean that you stop trying and you give in, and you don't adapt your approach and continue taking feedback and asking questions and listening.
But it's hard. It's not
really
an easy
hard.
process. Yeah, it's a really difficult process. What do you think, Justine? Do you feel responsibility to try and bring the next generation through? Who's going to fix this?
I did think for my business, it was me. I thought, yeah, I can get some fitters, we can have our own installation team, etc., etc. It proved way harder than expected, and everybody told me not to do it. Everybody said, don't do it, it's a mistake, don't employ. And it was really hard. It was way harder than I thought it would be. And so therefore, I'm taking a break from being responsible. So maybe I'll revisit in the future and I'll think, right, let's try that again. But definitely not in my short-term plans to try and fix that myself. No.
It's interesting hearing what Justine's saying, because obviously she's been down the road that in many respects we're contemplating turning into. And it's a salutary warning in many respects. But then I've got other people that are in the industry, my peer group who I know and respect, who have successfully set up and run separate installation businesses. And I think because we don't employ our installers, then it makes it incredibly difficult for us to employ apprentices. Yet I do feel an obligation, particularly as I'm getting older, to put back into the industry that's given me a good living over the last 30, 40 years. And one of the ways I could do that and influence that is by employing apprentices and encouraging new people into the industry and giving them skill sets that they wouldn't otherwise get. So having an independent installation company that doesn't necessarily work exclusively for us. Don't forget, once you've got an independent installation company, it can install product, whether that be kitchens or other products such as bathrooms or bedrooms, for other people. It doesn't necessarily have to work exclusively for RFK. But then that opens the door then to being able to employ one or two apprentices and share them out between the installers, which currently we just simply can't do. It's hard enough work taking on an apprentice as a trainee designer. So to do so with an employed trainee installer and then sell them to our regular subcontract installers, it would just be an impossible task at the moment.
Nick, you get guys, you obviously got Trade Counter there as well. That's how your business started. Do you feel a responsibility, or do you feel it's a way to solve your own problems, is to kind of have some kind of process to bring new guys in and to encourage that, like apprentices?
Yeah, I think it's quite a difficult issue for small independents, because I think, as Trevor's spoken about, you need a certain amount of critical mass in order to have the work available for an apprentice to get that meaningful experience. So if you've got a single fitter and he doesn't want an apprentice with him all of the time, it's very difficult. And to keep an apprentice meaningfully engaged throughout a working day when you've only got one job on can be a very difficult thing to achieve. So there is a difficulty and there are obstacles there. And, it does make you wonder whether the industry as a whole needs to be a little bit more creative in how it achieves that, whether smaller independents pull together to have almost a bank of apprentices that they can shuffle around between them. I don't know. But for me, trying to take on an apprentice fitter would be nigh on impossible at this point. If we could grow the business and have a few more installations on the go, which would be lovely, then I could see, that could be an opportunity. Where we have tried to do it, so on the Trade Counter side, we had a guy leave us last year who'd been with us nearly 25 years. The guy that I brought in is a young lad, early 20s. We've spent quite a lot of time with him, product training, so that he knows what he's talking about when he's serving the customers. That's been going really well. He's probably found it hard. It's been an experience for me as well, but we're enjoying that. And we see that as part of our sort of obligation, if you like, to bring people in. But I think independence as a whole, whether you're recruiting someone who's in a sales role or in an installation role, it can be really hard, because there's a lot of people who look at small businesses as perhaps not giving them the employment opportunities that they're looking for. Some people like the look of a big corporate organisation because they think, well, I can start at the bottom and I can work my way up, and they don't necessarily see that there's opportunities there with a smaller business. I advertised for an apprentice on the trade counter 2 years ago. I had 2 applicants, neither of which actually turned up for the interview. So, and that advert was live for about 12 months. But you go down Screwfix and there's plenty of people working behind the counter down there. So it can be a really difficult thing, just even tempting people through the door to interview, let alone finding someone that you would trust in someone's home from the get-go. And I know from the trade counter side, the clients that we have that come in on the trade side who are successful with an apprenticeship program, they do that because they've got a big enough quantity of tradespeople working within the business that they can move them around, and they're getting good experience on a day-to-day basis. And when the fitter installer is doing work that isn't suitable for an apprentice, they can be left alone to get on with that. They've not got that responsibility of an apprentice day in, day out.
Can I just add one thing? Because Trevor said about employing people, and I think the biggest problem with employing fitters is that Justine said she's booking March, April, May. If you've employed someone who has a 4-week notice period, that becomes a real issue, and we have been stuck with that. I just wanted to add that in, so something to manage if anyone's going to employ people. Having enough people to spread that work is something you really have to risk assess and plan for.
And also, even though it's 4 weeks notice, people don't have to they don't have to honour it. They don't
have to honour it. They might have 3 weeks holiday left.
They might just leave.
Or they might just do a rubbish job in the interim.
Oh yeah.
Okay, there's the voice of experience.
Leave that on a positive note.
Yeah, leave that on a positive note.
We have had some amazing experiences with the recommended fitters, and sometimes I feel like we can always in life just focus on the negatives. But we had an incredible experience with a new fitter that we took on as a recommended fitter. We couldn't get a shower screen up to the client's bathroom, so he cut the ceiling downstairs and posted it through the joists like an envelope through a letterbox, and then he replastered their ceiling downstairs, and we didn't even know. And the customer said, afterwards when we went to take photos, yeah, he was fantastic, and the work he did on the ceiling downstairs. So I immediately thought, oh no, he had a leak. And she said, oh no, we got a turd on the stairs and he couldn't get a big shower screen up, so he posted it through like an envelope. And I was like, wow, that's really great problem solving.
That's why they're worth the weight in gold, isn't it, Trevor?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, if you checked out our projects page on the website, you'll find that 9 out of 10 of our client endorsements always mention the installer by name as alongside the designer, that cap in hand between the two of them, what a wonderful job they did for them as a client. So the installers ultimately are incredibly important to us as a business, and we would never disrespect that.
No, and I think one of the things that should be factored into that rate and the cost is the cost of it when it goes wrong. If it's not done properly, the cost of putting it right is usually much more than you've saved on getting a slightly cheaper rate from somebody as well. Look, we could do this all day, couldn't we? But I'm very conscious of the clock's beating us a little bit. We will revisit installation, I'm sure, in the context of every other discussion that we have about things. Thank you so much for all your time. Nick, I hope you've turned some good business around then. You've had a few in, haven't you?
I've survived.
I think all of us are now thinking you know what, I really could do with a Canon WD-40. That's what we're all thinking. Thank you all, and I'll see you next week.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.